Hello and welcome back to Round the Table, your slow TV English class from the Meeting Point, broadcasting not only to Bilbao but throughout the world. And the topic of the week this week was order and chaos. Coming up in this program, we will have some vocabulary. We have amazing facts, or slightly interesting facts about orchestras. We'll be looking at some pronunciation problems, some typical mistakes. We have an interesting word as well, which is very topical of the moment. But before that, we have this week's monologue from our celebrity guest reader.
We, as humans, are natural pattern seekers. We search for meaning in clouds, constellations, and coincidences. Order offers us comfort. It gives us a sense that the world is intelligible, that events follow rules. Without it, we feel vulnerable, adrift in uncertainty. So, we build systems, structures, and rituals to make sense of what surrounds us. According to European religious belief, the world was created for mankind. We are not a part of nature. It is there for us to use and exploit. The result is a belief that the world must be ordered, shaped, and brought under control. During the Enlightenment, scientists and thinkers were driven by the conviction that if something could be observed, measured, and classified, it could be understood, and therefore controlled. The natural world was broken into categories: species, elements, laws of motion. Language was codified, grammar rules established, and dictionaries compiled. Human societies were analyzed through emerging disciplines like anthropology, psychology, and economics. This appetite for order extended beyond knowledge and into the structure of society itself. Class systems became more rigidly defined. Dress codes, speech patterns, and public behavior all became markers of one's place within the social hierarchy. The upper classes were expected to embody restraint, formality, and decorum, virtues aligned with control and order. Those who did not adhere to these norms were seen as unruly, uncultured, or inferior. During the colonial period, imperial powers exported their vision of order to the rest of the world. Lands were mapped, borders drawn, customs replaced. Colonizers undertook civilizing missions, bringing law and structure to disordered societies. Their order was imposed, often violently, on systems they did not understand. This tension remains with us to this day. The controlled precision of a classical symphony versus the anarchy of improvisation. The rigorously choreographed ballet against the spontaneity of street dance. The sculpted formality of a French garden versus the wild, ungoverned beauty of nature. Order offers clarity, predictability, and control. Chaos invites spontaneity, creativity, and possibility. Both have value? Perhaps the answer lies not in choosing one over the other, but in recognizing when each is needed. There is a time for symmetry and rule, and there is a time to step off the path and see where the wildness leads.
One-handed fruit juggling is the craze that is sweeping the nation. Fun for all ages, whether you are young or old. Girls cannot resist a boy who can do one-handed fruit juggling. Start impressing girls today by signing up for our online course.
So today's vocabulary is vaguely connected with order and chaos, but it also is a result of discussing last week's power cuts that we had here in Spain and Portugal. We have the words grid, web and net, which are all kind of similar things, but we use them as usual in specific contexts. So let's look at the word grid. That is a structure made up of intersecting lines which are often built up of squares. So if you look at a map, often a map is covered in squares of vertical and horizontal lines which help you with coordinates if you want to navigate using coordinates. So a map is divided up into a grid. We also use it to talk about the electrical systems. This is how it came into the conversation, I think. We have a power grid or an electricity grid which covers the country and supplies our electricity. You can also have living off grid. If you go up into the mountains and become self-sufficient and you are not dependent on the electricity supply or the water supply, that is called off-grid living. It can also be used in urban planning. You have a grid layout, or the city can be designed on a grid system. If you look at a modern city like New York, if you look at the map of it, it's all made of vertical and horizontal lines. Not like our European cities, which are on a medieval plan, which were not at all organised. An American city is usually on a grid system, which gives us this adjective gridlocked, when all of the traffic stops moving because there is the sheer volume of traffic. It's like very severe traffic jams. We can say the city is gridlocked. And then we have the word web. Originally in biology there's the spider's web, also called a cobweb. So it's a structure in nature that something like a spider would make. We also use it in technology for the World Wide Web, which gives us the website as well. And then we can also use it a bit more metaphorically, really, talking about complexity and deception. So you can have a web of lies or a web of intrigue. You can see how that kind of web would catch you in the same way as a spider's web would. So you can see why there's that devious nature to it. Now we have net, which originally is a mesh-like fabric used for catching, trapping things. So the fishing net would be the original one. So it gives us the metaphorical to cast your net. If you're searching for something, you could say they cast a wide net in their job search. So obviously that's a metaphorical copy of casting a net. cast meaning throw, which I think we looked at before, casting. So you cast a net when you're fishing. There's also various nets in sports. So in a game of tennis, down the middle of the court there's the net, and at the back of the goal in football you have a net. So they appear in sport as well. You also have a safety net. Imagine you are a trapeze artist in a circus. They put a net down underneath you to catch you if you fall. So that is a safety net, which can be the literal safety net or a metaphorical one. So you have a social security system in most societies. So if you are unemployed, you get unemployment benefit, which is a metaphorical safety net to catch you when you are in trouble, you see. Of course, we have the internet, which is really something very similar to the World Wide Web. Why one is a net and one is a web, I don't know. We also have a rail network. The system of railways across a country is a network. Again, I don't know why the electricity is a grid, but it is. It's an electrical grid, but a rail network. And then there's another net which is used in finance, which I don't think is really the same thing, but you have a net loss or your net worth or your net income, which is what remains after all the expenses have been taken out. But I don't think that one is the same as the net we're talking about. So there you go. That's your vocabulary: grids, nets, and webs. All very similar things and all quite different things at the same time. So, as I promised, here's some amazing facts. Well, as I said, it's not really amazing facts, but they are kind of interesting. We were talking about music and organised music, like classical music, where people read music, and the more improvised music. And we discovered that there is no difference between a symphony orchestra and a philharmonic orchestra. Apparently they are the same thing, the same size, more or less, but there is no difference. Sometimes a city will have both of them, and they just use the two names to differentiate between two orchestras. But they're basically the same thing. My interesting fact of the week is that the triangle player gets paid the same as the rest of the musicians. I thought that's a very easy gig, isn't it, hitting a triangle? But apparently they're highly trained musicians, though I find that hard to believe. And the conductor of an orchestra is also highly paid and essential to the functioning of the orchestra. According to my research, the orchestra will not function without a conductor. And then we have a chamber orchestra, which is smaller than the normal orchestra, and they don't play necessarily in concert halls. Originally they played in a chamber, but obviously in a very big chamber, so you have to live in a palace to employ a chamber orchestra, and they seem to function perfectly well without a conductor. So I don't know why the conductor is so essential in the other orchestras, but there you go. Another thing we were debating was ballet and the choreography of a ballet. Again, we were discussing the organised dance steps as opposed to the more improvised dance steps. Yes, they are very well choreographed, but the discussion was, if you went to see a classical ballet like Swan Lake or the Nutcracker Suite, the question was, is that choreographed like when it was originally done? Are they still doing the same moves, or is it just the music that was written all that time ago, and each time they invent new choreography? Well, both are true, apparently, according to my research. Sometimes they do have completely new choreography, sometimes they readapt some choreography that's been used before, and sometimes they go back to the original choreography. In the case of those two previously mentioned ballets, they go back to the second half of the 19th century. So my question is, how do they know the original choreography? Well, apparently there is a system of annotation where you can write down dance steps in the same way as we write music, or in a very similar way. But that was only started in the beginning of the 20th century. So how do they know the original choreography? Well, apparently people made notes, people wrote about it, but basically it was passed down from one set of dancers to the next, and it was taught from dancer to dancer. And it was just by word of mouth, basically, and by copying each other. And they can apparently do the original version somehow. There you go. There's an interesting fact. One more interesting thing that appeared in our conversation, contrasting the very organised music with the more improvised music, the difference between a violin and a fiddle. A fiddle. Basically, if you can read music, you play a violin. If you just make it up in a pub, you're a fiddler, like the fiddler on the roof, a fiddle player. So if you're playing Irish music or sort of Appalachian old country music in America, you're playing the fiddle. Which reminds me of the expression, as fit as a fiddle, you see? I think it's the energy of the movement of someone playing a fiddle. I think you should be fit as a fiddler, really, rather than the fiddle, but there you go. Interesting facts. Not quite amazing, but interesting, I think you will agree.
Tired of overcrowded holiday destinations? Need to escape from the hustle and bustle of the tourist industry? Relax and enjoy the quiet and wide-open expanses of the English Channel, the Mediterranean of the North.
In our previous pronunciation features, we were looking at unvoiced and voiced sounds. So we looked at the difference between the s and the z, and then we looked at the difference between the ch and the j, ch, j. In this one, we got two more sounds that are related. We got the unvoiced th and the voiced v. So you put your tongue between your teeth and go th, th. And if you add the vibrations in your throat, you should get a v noise. Now, the first one is very common in Spanish. The second one is very rare in languages. I think they use it in some Scandinavian languages. They have it in Iceland, I believe. And they use this symbol as a letter in Iceland. So to begin with, let's look at some words with the th in various places. If we look at words with a th at the beginning, we have think and three. Think, three. If we want some words with it in the middle, we have words like nothing and method. Nothing, method. And at the end of the word, we have teeth and bath. Teeth, bath. The voiced version appears in words like this and that, those and them. Those kind of words have a v at the beginning. And it appears in the middle of words like mother, brother, other, weather, leather, etc. Now, these sounds, as I said, are quite rare in other languages. The first one is actually quite common in Spanish, but generally speaking, people replace these sounds with a sound from their own language which they consider close enough. And this is how you can often tell people who are non-native speakers by the way they pronounce the TH. So as I said, the first one, the unvoiced one, is very common in Spanish, so you won't have any trouble with that. But the second one is often replaced by the letter D. So a lot of people say dis, dat and dos. Now that is actually quite common even amongst some English speakers. If you listen to people from the Caribbean or from Ireland, they will also do the same thing. In fact, the unvoiced one in Ireland is usually pronounced the same as a T. So there's no difference, well, to my ear, there's no difference between tree, the plant, or tree, the number. Okay, they say there's trees, meaning 3 trees. At least that's how I hear it. Maybe they hear something different. So these TH sounds are a bit difficult for a lot of people. Even amongst younger people in England now, this is something that started in London and has spread all over England as far as I can tell, particularly amongst the younger generations. The unvoiced one tends to sound rather like an F, and the voiced one at the front of a word often sounds like a D, and in the middle sounds like a V. So people say think instead of think, and there's no difference between free with an F at the beginning and free with a TH at the beginning. And they say nothing, teeth, bath. And with the voiced one, you often hear people talking about their brother or their mother or the weather, which to me sounds quite bad, but we seem to be in the minority, the ones of us that still pronounce the TH in the traditional way. So maybe in 50 years' time, we'll be wondering why we ever use the TH spelling anyway, instead of just F's and V's. So there are a lot of variations from one pronunciation to the other, but the correct form, you've got the th in think, 3, and nothing, etc. And you've got th in this, that, those, other, brother, weather, leather, etc. So try to do them correctly, but if you can't, it's not the end of the world, because lots of English-speaking people have different ways of doing it.
Relax. Go fishing.
Well, today we have an interesting word combined with very interesting history. The word that's very topical at the moment, if you're following the elections in the Vatican. The cardinals have to decide who the next pope will be. And there's this word conclave. This gathering of cardinals is called a conclave. And it literally means with a key. They are locked in with a key. Conclave. So there's an interesting word origin. Now the story goes all the way back to the year 1268 and the death of Pope Clement IV. And the cardinals met at the city or the town of Viterbo in Italy to decide on who the new pope was going to be. But there was a big divide between two factions and they couldn't decide. One group wanted one person to be the pope, the other group wanted the other person to be the pope, and they couldn't decide. They argued about it for nearly 3 years and they still couldn't come to a decision. So the townspeople of Viterbo lost patience and they locked the cardinals in, and this is where the conclave comes into it. The people of the town locked them in and said, you have to make a decision. And they still continued arguing about it. So the people started reducing the food that they gave to the cardinals to force them to come to a decision. And still they wouldn't decide. And one of the excuses was that they were locked in and the Holy Spirit couldn't enter the room to help them with their decision. So instead of unlocking the doors, the townspeople went and they removed the roof of the building so that the Holy Spirit could get in. Anyway, eventually they came to a decision, but because one group wanted one person to be the Pope, the other group wanted another person, in the end they came to a decision to vote for someone who neither of them wanted. So they ended up with Teobaldo Visconti. He became Pope Gregory X. And apparently he wasn't even a cardinal. He wasn't a religious person at all. He was away fighting in the Holy Land on the Crusades. So they sent him a message. He was out there fighting, and someone sent him a message saying, "You're the new Pope. Come back to Rome quickly." So there you go. That's the history of the conclave. A very interesting word, an interesting etymology, and a very amusing story, I thought. Well, that's about all we have time for this week. So don't forget, next Friday we have our very exciting trivia quiz in the office. We already have some snacks available. Look at these. Fried egg flavour crisps. Apparently these are quite common. Everyone else seems to know of their existence, but this is a new thing for me, so I'm quite excited just for the crisps. So I look forward to seeing you at the very exciting quiz evening. If not, I'll see you through the week in class, or if you're not coming to class, if you're further afield in the world. We'll be back next week with another programme, and we'll be discussing choice, I think the topic will be. So, have a good week. Till next week.